Welcome to Lesson 5.3, Ratios, Proportions, and Percentages. These are core concepts in TEAS math and in everyday healthcare tasks. Whether you're calculating IV flow rates, comparing doses, or figuring out lab result percentages, you'll need to understand how values relate to one another. Let's start with ratios. A ratio compares two quantities using division. It tells you how much of one thing there is in relation to another. You can write a ratio in three different ways: 3 to 2, 3:2, or as a fraction, 3/2. All of these mean the same thing. For every 3 parts of the first item, there are 2 parts of the second. Here's an example. If a recipe calls for 2 cups of flour for every 1 cup of sugar, the ratio of flour to sugar is 2 to 1. And here's a TEAS tip. Pay close attention to the order. Flour to sugar is 2 to 1. But sugar to flour is 1 to 2, not the same thing. Now that we've talked about ratios, let's take it a step further. A proportion is simply 2 equal ratios. You'll often see these on the TEAS when solving for an unknown value, especially in word problems, conversions, or dosage calculations. To solve a proportion, start by writing 2 ratios as equal fractions. Then, use cross-multiplication to find the missing number. Let's try a sample problem. If 3 pens cost $6, how much do 5 pens cost? First, set it up as a proportion. 3/6 equals 5/x. Now, cross-multiply. 3 times x equals 6 times 5. That gives us 3x equals 30. Now, divide both sides by 3. 30 divided by 3 is 10, so x equals 10. That means 5 pens cost $10. TEAS tip. Always label your units clearly, like dollars, pens, minutes, or milliliters. That helps you keep track of what's on the top and what's on the bottom of your ratios, so you don't mix things up. Next, let's break down how percentages work and how to easily convert between forms. A percent simply means per 100. So when you see 60%, that means 60 out of 100. You can also write it as a fraction, 60/100, or as a decimal, 0.60. Now here's how to convert between forms. To go from a percent to a decimal, divide by 100. For example, 75% becomes 75 divided by 100, which equals 0.75. To turn a decimal into a percent, multiply by 100. For instance, 0.3 times 100 equals 30%. And to convert a percent to a fraction, just write it over 100 and simplify. Like this, 40% becomes 40/100, which simplifies to 2/5. TEAS tip. You'll often be asked to switch between these forms, especially when comparing answers or solving word problems. Make sure you're quick and confident moving from percent to decimal to fraction and back. Now let's talk about how to find a percentage of a number, a skill that comes up a lot on the TEAS, especially in real-life situations like discounts, dosages, and lab values. The method is simple. To find a percent of a number, just multiply. Here's an example. What is 20% of 80? First, convert the percent to a decimal. 20% becomes 0.20. Now multiply. 0.20 times 80 equals 16. So 20% of 80 is 16. TEAS tip. This formula comes up often, so memorize it. Percent as a decimal times total equals your answer. Sometimes on the TEAS, you'll be asked how much a value changed by percentage, either an increase or a decrease. Let's break it down. For percent increase, use this formula. New minus original, divided by original times 100. Example, a medicine went from $50 to $60. What's the percent increase? Step 1, 60 minus 50 equals 10. Step 2, 10 divided by 50 equals 0.2. Step 3, 0.2 times 100 equals 20% increase. Percent decrease. Now flip the order for decrease. Original minus new, divided by original times 100. Example, a patient's cholesterol dropped from 200 to 160. Step 1, 200 minus 160 equals 40. Step 2. 40 divided by 200 equals 0.2. Step 3. 0.2 times 100 equals 20% decrease. TEAS tip. Always use the original value in the denominator, not the new value, when calculating percent change. On the TEAS, math often appears in real-life word problems, especially when it comes to ratios and percentages. So how should you approach these questions? First, listen carefully for what's being compared. Are you working with a ratio, or is it asking for a percent? Next, write down what you already know and identify the missing value you're solving for. Then, decide on the best method to solve it. If two quantities are being compared, you'll usually set up a proportion. If the question asks, what percent of, use the percent formula. And if it's simply comparing values, you might just simplify a ratio. Let's go through a quick example. A solution contains 60 milligrams of a drug in 3 milliliters. How many milligrams are in 5 milliliters? Here, we're comparing mg to ml. That's a ratio, so set up a proportion. 60 over 3 equals x over 5. Now, cross-multiply. 3 times x equals 60 times 5. That gives us 3x equals 300. Finally, divide both sides by 3, and you get x equals 100 milligrams. So, the solution contains 100 milligrams in 5 milliliters. TEAS tip. Word problems are just math in story form. Stick to your routine, identify what it's asking, organize your info, then solve with the right tool. And always label your units to stay accurate. Let's lock in the most important points from this lesson. First, remember that a ratio compares two amounts, and it's crucial to write them in the correct order, just as the question gives them. Next, a proportion is simply two equal ratios. To solve them, use cross-multiplication. A percent means out of 100, and you should be comfortable switching between fractions, decimals, and percent forms. To find a percent of a number, just multiply the decimal version of the percent by the number. For percent change, whether it's an increase or decrease, use this formula. Change divided by original, then multiplied by 100. And finally, for word problems, always label your values clearly and decide whether to use a proportion setup or a percent formula to solve.